Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons, and this is the Earthworks Podcast. I am very excited to have a friend from a long time ago. Many years you and I have been friends, haven't we? I think we grew up together. We grew up together in this industry. Mr. Pete Wendt, who is the director of golf courses and grounds at some course in Maryland called Congressional Country Club, something like that, he looks very tired because he's been working his tail off for the last, how long has this project been going on? 2 years?
Oh my goodness, since October of 19.
Wow.
We broke ground on October 1st.
Yeah, you are a masochist. You just seem to want to have this kind of aggravation in your life, and you just keep doing it over. Where's the next job? You're going to find another place to build after this? Is all that?
No, I'm too tired. Way too tired.
You look a little tired. You and I go way back. You and I met when you were working for Mr. Smithley at Robert Trent Jones Country Club, probably in what year? 98?
96.
96. Wow.
96.
So we were what? We were 12 years old at the time. Is that
exactly? That's it. I was 12. You were 22.
Yeah, I was a little bit older than you,
That's
as
right.
you can tell by my hair and things of that
right.
nature. But yeah, we've gone way back. In fact, I've learned an awful lot from you over the years, and all the guys that that Glenn mentored, including you and Scotty and all that. And you've now kind of taken on a part of the patriotic role of the RTJ family, you and Scott, being that you're the two guys that have actually stayed as grass growers since Mr. Smithley has now moved off into folding napkins and making butter patties as a general manager.
I just talked to him last night.
Yeah, he was one of our first podcasts. This is now you might be the first of the second year of our podcast for us. So talk to us a little bit about how you got into all this. I don't even know some of these stories. I know you're an illegal alien from Canada, and you were brought in under the auspices of something in the backseat of an old Chevy or something. I'm not sure the whole story.
That's right, a Skoda.
That's right.
So no, I mean, really the long and short story is worked at country clubs all through high school and through college. Went to school for business up in Canada, a place called Carleton University. And, then I went out west to basically be a ski bum for a couple of years. So I went out to Whistler, British Columbia, and I was lucky. They were in a golf boom out there. They were building Nicholas North, which was the first Nicholas golf course on the west coast of Canada. I worked at a place called Chateau Whistler Golf Club, and I was lucky to have a general manager there who said, you really seem to like this. You've been doing this for a while. Why don't you think about getting into the business? And he said, look, if you're going to get into the business, I would suggest look at Penn State or Michigan State. So I picked the right one. Penn State.
Thank God.
And that's right.
We just pissed off half the country, but that's okay because us Penn Staters are happy.
That's okay. And was lucky enough to get into Penn State. Came down here, and really it's a crazy story. I interned at Congressional Country Club in 1995 for Paul Ladshaw.
Wow.
We hosted the Senior Open.
Yep, I remember that.
We had a lot of trials and tribulations with the greens at that time. He inherited some greens that were in really rough shape, and we did everything we could to get them into great shape. And next thing you know, I met a girl named Cindy.
Wow.
Here in the DC area through a buddy of mine, Curtis Tyrell, who was a superintendent out in Arizona, was at Medina for a long time.
And a classmate of yours, right? Wasn't Curtis?
A classmate of mine. Yeah. Curtis was a good friend and a classmate of mine. And the rest is really history. Here we are now, back at the place it all started.
Really? I never knew that he introduced you to Cindy. That's a story that I did not know.
He did. So now I'm in the office where I used to get my ass chewed. I finally
How's that feel?
I finally got rid of the tick. It took me a year or two to get rid of the tick. And
so the first day you walked in there from taking the job here, did that feel strange? I mean, it had to be kind of weird.
Very strange. And I'll tell you though, it's super exciting. And
yeah, I bet.
I've been lucky to be involved in this massive transformation of the blue course, and we've got, gosh, I've got it on the wall here, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 major championships coming up between now and 2037.
And you'll make all of them, I'm sure, right? You'll be there for all of them.
The last couple, they'll be pushing me around in a scooter, but
that's okay.
But I hope to make them all.
Where in Canada is home?
Toronto, right outside of Toronto.
So you, as a kid, you wanted to be a ski bum, and you just kind of fell into this. And like a lot of people in this industry, the superintendent talked you into, taking the leap of faith and going down this road, right?
And so glad I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a dream. And, when I think back, it's funny because we had this little patch of, who knows what it was. It was probably poetry in our backyard as a kid. And I mean, I'm talking way back as a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember I put a little orange bicycle flag in it. I used to take my dad's push mower out and mow a little green at a touch lower height with our push mower. And so that's
so you were destined as a little kid.
I was destined.
Yeah. Did they buy you one of those little plastic push mowers when you were a little child and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, with the bubbles in it?
With the bubbles, yeah.
That's the one. That's the only one they'll allow me to use.
Yeah, you still have that. I saw that when I was there last.
Yeah, they don't let me touch power tools.
No, it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing.
That's right.
So you were in Congressional the first go around, not long after Mr. Latshaw got there, right? I mean, he'd gotten down there in early mid-90s.
Correct. So yeah. Yeah, so it wasn't long. I think he got here in 94.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was there in 95.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually showed up that day he got there because he had Mr. Bader was working prior to him coming over from Wilmington, and then there was a lot of stuff going on at Congressional in the mid 90s, and I can imagine you walking in there. There was probably quite the crew that was there that when you got to Congressional, right? Bunch of guys that we know.
It was insane. I mean, I want to say there were close to 30 guys with turf degrees or working on turf degrees at the time. So, and, a lot of, really household names in the industry.
Yeah.
From Paul Raminer to Sam Green to John Zimmers to the list goes on and on and on.
Quite the training ground. And Pete Wendt, look at that list.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at that with his little plastic mower.
That's right.
So what was it like in that kind of a crew? I mean, you were right out of college, or was this a proper internship?
That was a 6-month internship, and I'll tell you, it was interesting because look, everyone's vying for some time with the boss.
Right.
And everyone's trying to work their butt off to make it in their career at the time. It was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of hard work.
I bet.
But it was a lot of fun.
So where did you head from Congressional?
From Congressional, I went to work for Glenn.
You did? Okay. So RTJ was the next stop.
I want to go work for Glenn. I knew they had the President's Cup coming up that year. So
that was 96?
That was 96. So I started with Glenn in the spring of 96, and
Cup was what, September, October?
Cup was in September. So
I have it on the wall somewhere here in my office.
It was a really exciting year. It was a lot of fun. And look, Glenn's a great friend of yours. He's a great friend of mine. And I'll tell you, the best thing Glenn taught all of us was, look, you know what? Take your job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And we had a ton of fun, and we still have a ton of fun to this day.
Yeah, I've said this on this podcast and in a lot of places in my career, but certainly one of the greatest networks in this industry. I mean, and I think, Glenn certainly is, is to be commended on this, but you guys generated some phenomenal grass growers, some great setup guys, but, some really good everyday, day-to-day agronomists. I mean, it's really a powerful, strong agronomy network, and you're still pretty close to each other. I mean, every time I see one of the RTJ members go out and get their first superintendent's job, it's just like this collection of friends come and pull together for them, and there's always somebody at the other end of a phone call. Obviously you're one of those, and maybe the first call that a lot of guys get, but I know a lot of guys call you a lot from the RTJ family. I don't know how you take all these calls at this point, but I'm sure you hang up on half of them.
It's a great crowd, and I've been lucky to have a ton of awesome guys work with me, and look, they've they're the ones who have really helped me become successful. So,
yeah.
and now they're all, like you said, we talked earlier, Josh, Brandon, Ryan at
Yeah.
Woodmont. There's
Yeah.
so many of them out there, and they're all great at what they do.
They are. They're all very, very good. And most of them have been on this podcast or will be at some point if I'm lucky. But so talk about RTJ. That must have been quite the experience. I mean, I was there for the President's Cup, and that was, quite honestly, it was one of the first golfing experiences, tournament experiences that I'd ever been to. Certainly been working with Glenn prior to that, helping set up and, or at least, do the little piece that I do. But I actually came down for that, and I think it was a great experience. I didn't know anything about what the tournament was. I had no idea what the format was. I'll tell this story real quick, but I was, I didn't know what to do, so I'm walking around the property, and I go and sit on the bleachers at 17. And then I realized that half the damn tournament was already over by the time they came to 17. I didn't even know, why aren't they playing here? And I had no idea. But what happened was Freddie Couples and Vijay Singh came up 17. And it's a relatively short par 4, and Vijay hits in. He's about I don't know, he's about 10 feet from the pin, and then Freddie hits in. He's about 30 feet from the pin, and Freddie comes up the putt and he sinks it, and Vijay misses it, and the tournament was over. And I just happened to be, by dumbass luck, I just happened to be sitting there watching this phenomenal experience, and the place went nuts because everybody had come around because this could have been the match, and it was really quite, just like I said, dumb luck because I had no idea what I was doing. But
So cool.
Yeah, the place, it's truly one of the greatest golf courses. It's the old man's, Robert Trent Jones, stream song. It was his, it's just a phenomenal property. And from day one, you guys, and obviously Scotty Furlong now continuing it, it's just always been a spectacular track. I can't imagine you don't have this huge spot in your heart for that property.
There's something amazing about walking off the 8th green onto the 9th tee.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, you're bordering that beautiful Lake Manassas, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really cool experience. It's a fun place.
So there's got to be some great stories of your years. How long were you there? I don't even know that.
So I was there until the summer of 99. And in July of 99, I left to go down and build Kinloch Golf Club down in Richmond, Virginia.
Another great. So this is your second big experience of building. But so let's talk about Kinloch. Golf course of the year in 2001, a Lester George design, spectacular, another lakeside property. And you basically came into, what was it, woods when you got down there?
It was woods. It was woods when I got down there, and there were center lines cut through. And hey, we hired a contractor that next month in August and got started in September and built us a golf course. And Lester George and Vinny Giles. Vinny was kind of the czar of the club, famous amateur golfer, and Vinny was what we would call the design consultant on the job, and Vinny just did an amazing job as well. And the two of them together, it turned out to be just a fantastic golf course.
Yeah. What's Vinny's background? He's got quite a story, right?
Yeah, Vinny's one of the most famous amateur golfers alive today, right? He won the USAM in 75, I want to say, in Charlotte. He won the Senior Am. He's a Walker Cupper. He's played in many Masters, and he was a golf agent. He was one of the first golf agents out there and had a lot of big names in his corral. So, Vinny's very well known around the golf world. Member at Seminole, spends his winters down in Florida, and great player to this day. And Vinny's, mid-70s now.
Oh, I didn't know he was still playing. He's still playing?
Yeah.
Is he playing in tournaments?
I don't think he's playing in a lot of tournaments. I want to say he did play in the U.S. Senior Am last year.
Oh, really? Good for him.
Yeah, he still hits it a mile.
You still talk to him?
I do.
Yeah. Has he seen Congressional yet?
He hasn't. So we've
have to
talked
get up
about that. I need to get him up and see it hopefully this fall.
So Glenn Smithley comes down to Manassas, Virginia from here, and not far from where I'm sitting in Easton, Pennsylvania. He's from the Allentown area, and comes down into that part of the world and decides he's going to grow in all bent grass, which at the time, and I think, I guess he'd been there a few years before your day, but Certainly at the time, that was the stupidest move that anybody would ever make. And every superintendent around them would tell them that on a regular basis. So then you decide to take it even further south into the real pit of that transition and bring bent grass into Richmond, Virginia, which of course is completely impossible to do, I'm sure. And that was your idea, was to go down there and, we did it up here, let's take it down to Richmond. How did that go?
Well, it's funny because I remember, so I got there in the summer, of course, and we start construction in the fall. And I want to say the National was in New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been 2000. It was in New Orleans. And
None of us remember that.
That's right, exactly. I remember talking to Smick, and I'm like, God, Smick, every superintendent in the area has come by and given me their card and said, hey, just call me when you're ready to sprig Bermuda because this ain't working. And I'm like, God, I'm starting to believe them. But you know what? We had the right infrastructure. We had good grasses. It was L93 wall to wall, and at the time was a fairly newer grass.
Yep.
And look, it comes down to basic agronomy, right? It's water management, it's building soils, and we did a really great job with that, along with an amazing team. And we were super successful down there, and it was a great run. It was a lot of fun. I was there for 15 years before I moved back up here to the DC area.
And it's really a spectacular golf course. I mean, I it's always been one of my favorite. In fact, I still to this day in my office here have a nice picture that you gave me of Kinloch. I don't remember what hole, 16, I think, sitting in one of our rooms here. But it's, I always look at that and think, wow, what a great property. So that first summer you go down there, it had to be hot as the dickens. I mean, it had to be unbearably hot because you had all those trees and it's Richmond, Virginia, and you're still thinking bent grass?
Hot red clay. And I remember my wife was,
don't forget the red clay.
So it's the summer of 99. My wife is pregnant with our daughter, who was born on December 9th of 99. And I actually walk her around that entire property on a 100-degree day. I'm surprised we're still married after that walk.
Oh, your wife or your daughter?
Property in the middle of nowhere going, are you sure you're going to come down here and build a golf course here? I don't see it. So, but man, we got lucky, and it turned out just so great.
Whose idea was bent grass? Was it yours?
No, you know what? So it's an interesting story. So the developer, it was a gentleman named C.B. Robertson, big developer in the area. He had owned the land for years. He built the lake. He was very smart to build the lake before it got to a point with environmental restrictions where he couldn't build the lake.
Right. Couldn't do it today, probably, right?
That's right. So then he called Vinny and said, hey, Vinny, I'd like you to build a golf course for me. I'm going to build this big community out here, and it's going to be a public Bermuda grass golf course. So Vinny said, look, I know nothing about golf course design, but I know Lester. Why don't you let me talk to him, and maybe the two of us can work together on this thing. So they went out and walked the property a few times, and after being out on the property and starting to route it, they came back to CB and said, look, we really feel like this property's too good for a public golf course. We want to go very high-end private golf only, and we want the best part of the land for the golf course. And I think that's when they said, hey, and we're thinking we want to go bent grass. They had actually talked to Terry Buchan. Terry Buchan was a consulting agronomist for them early on with grasses.
And so Terry was the one that encouraged him? I didn't know that. Terry encourage him to go bent?
Terry did encourage them to go bent. And then that's when I got involved, came down to interview. And next thing you know, like I said, come July, I was down there as part of the team. Yeah.
So I'm going to tell this story because you tell it often at my expense, but you were the last place where we did amendments as individual products. And I think you've cursed me many times on that. And ever since that point, we invented Renovate Plus, which is the combination of all those thousands of bags that you opened at Kinloch. And I believe it was the last place because I think you beat me up so many times over that I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I could put it all in a bag. I mean, it'd be really easy now that you're done.
Like, how stupid are you guys?
Yeah, exactly. So,
that's right.
And I don't know why we ever didn't think of that, but You
Basically, I invented Renovate Plus, is what you're telling me.
Yes, that's
Okay,
essentially.
good.
Of course, you have to get in line for that. I've got about 10 people that have told me the same thing.
That's good.
But there is truth to that, because Kinloch was the last place that we went out. So, you know, the whole idea was to get amendments into this sand so that you could build, you know, bent grass in basically this wooded area. And you know, we did a lot of amending on that property. But, you know, you've seen this picture, but I have a picture of your profile of one of the greens. That was probably, when I took the picture, it might have been 7, 8 years old. And I think the picture has your shoe in the background.
Yes.
But it's this beautiful picture of this profile that has this, you know, probably 5, 6 inch, you know, profile of organic matter. And I've used it forever in classes that I've taught, talking about how, you know, you can have good organic matter or bad organic matter. And you guys at Kinloch maintained really some of the most beautiful profile. It was consistent from head to toe. It was, you know, was well laced with top dressing. And then you saw, you know, 4 or 5 inches of straight sand below that. But then you saw this huge amount of root mass coming out of the back end of that. But, you know, I mean, I think for that kind of a property to have done that level of investment and put all that time and energy into it, even though it was a pain in the butt because I gave you 7,000 different things to do, you know, you really had an amazing profile on that property. And you know, and it's a testament to what you were able to accomplish agronomically.
Well, that was, you know, a testament to all your help too. But I want to tell you, it's interesting. So you learn so much over the years. And at 29 years old, I'm thinking, okay, this is what I think I need. Of course, greens are going to slow down over time. So I need a super fast sand. And it was really interesting because the sand, once we had it in the cavity with the amendments in it, perked at 35 inches per hour. So
Wow.
It was a super quick sand. And I remember in those first couple years, we'd get a thunderstorm on a Tuesday afternoon, and by Wednesday at lunchtime, we're chasing greens with
hoses,
right? And so, look, I think I had the right intention, but it should have been much slower than 35 inches per hour. And in turn, what happened was, like you said, over 7, 8 years, we built a really nice dirty medium.
right?
And it was a very good medium for growing grass. It stayed very firm. It had good texture, and we were able to grow some amazing roots and still have great conditions
And drainage. I mean, it wasn't clogging. And that's kind of the point I make when I show that slide, is that, you know, a lot of people will look at that profile that you had built in Kinloch, and this is, again, moving into 10 years. So it was, you know, a number of inches. And a lot of people look at, you know, I show it to superintendents across the country, and a lot of people look at that and say, oh, I wouldn't want anything like that. And then I kind of tell the story of how you guys, you know, were working this thing, and it was spectacular. And even after 10 years, you were still perking at a pretty high rate, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you can see in that picture, I mean, there's no thatch.
There's no thatch,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's just a nice,
Yeah.
dirty growing medium.
Right. But I guess the point I'm making is that a lot of people look at that and they say, oh, this is bad. I got to pull all this stuff out of here. And they actually go in and will look at a property like that. And I've followed a lot of guys, including some of your guys, who have built some really beautiful profiles. And then the guy that came in behind them literally saw something like that and was petrified of it, not understanding the difference between good organic profile and a bad organic profile, and they tore it all out. They took a gradient to it and ripped it all out, and then they're fighting the fight and, you know, pushing too much thatch. And I mean, like you said, that profile at Kinloch had it had very little thatch. You had enough to keep the surface playable and you know, and firm and together, but it was beautiful. It was a beautiful profile, and you know, I've never forgotten that picture. And I use it quite often, you know. And you taught a lot of guys. You had a lot of guys down at Kinloch that followed you, and now are out, like you said, Brandon and Ryan and Josh, and, you know, a lot of guys that have gotten out and done their own thing from Kinloch, and they cut their teeth on that thing. So, what was the hardest thing about building Kinloch?
Well, the grow-in was tough. The grow-in was really tough. I mean, we had Landscapes Unlimited in there with a monstrous crew, and they had decided to sod the fairway. So we contract grew the sod on the Eastern Shore, and we'd have 13 to 18 tractor trailer loads of sod going down a day. And I remember we got to the point where we're in late June, it's 98 degrees out. And look, there's one thing when it's 98 degrees out and you're on a nice golf course with green grass everywhere. When you're on a construction site with red clay everywhere, it feels like 150 degrees. And they'd be laying these 14th and 15th truckloads of the day. And number one, they were half dead by the time they got off of the truck. And by the time they threw it on the 180 degree clay, it was completely dead. I remember losing sleep for 2 or 3 nights and finally going to the owners and saying, hey, look, this is a massive waste of your investment. Like, we need to hit the pause button a little bit, keep working on green complexes, tee complexes, seeding what we can, and come back in September and sod the rest of the property. So, you know, at a young age,
cool down a little bit.
That was massive stress at that point. And hey, I had great ownership, and they agreed, and we kept moving forward, got all the greens seeded, got all the tees seeded, and, you know, kept moving forward with shaping and got back into it in the fall.
So you move back up to DC, you go over to Woodmont for a while, you do some great stuff, and then you say, hey, let's just jump right back into it again, go back into a whole new construction project.
That's it.
What the hell were you thinking when you came up with that?
You know what? I'm telling you, I think I just have a lot of issues. Number one.
Yeah, well, that goes without saying.
Yeah. And I'm always bored. So
right.
I need to be in complete mayhem to be happy.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that feeling, unfortunately. Juggling
so many balls that 90% of them are falling on the ground.
Yeah. So what are you going to do when you retire? I mean, you don't fish, do you? Or, you know,
yeah. No, I don't fish. I mean, I like to play golf, but I can't play golf 7 days a week. I mean, how about sitting in a lawn chair and drinking beer on the beach? How's that?
There you go. There you go. Like our friend Corey Haney.
Maybe vodka. Beer fills me up.
Yeah, it's got to be vodka now, because that's what we all have to drink, because we can't drink a lot of carbohydrates.
That's right.
Our body will fall apart. So let's talk about this project. You know, and again, I apologized to you a couple of weeks ago when I was down, because COVID really kept a lot of people away, and obviously I was one of those. With my delicate health, I was locked in the box for a year, and I kind of missed a lot of the growing, but I got to see it right after you started breaking ground, and you ripped down a zillion trees, and I'm sure there's a lot of good stories there. But give us the quick overview, and then let's dive into what Congressional looks like now. And I'll preface this by saying to everybody listening, this place is spectacular. I mean, I was blown away having, you know, not seen the progress. You know, when I remember when you were at Kinloch, I walked through it, you know, probably on a fairly regular basis. So, you know, it wasn't all that, you know, surprising, because there was never this big transition. But having missed a year because of COVID, of all the work that you had done, I walked in from, you know, starting to break ground back to a golf course that was completed, and completely blown away by how spectacular this thing is. But so it started. Let's get into a little bit of this. Andrew Green is your architect, so let's talk a little bit about Andrew. Let's start off with that. I mean, he's obviously done a hell of a job. I mean, you know, what can you tell us about Andrew?
Well, I'll tell you, is the long and short story is that we had to make an architect change.
Right, very early on, right?
Yeah, we had to make an architect change really in December of 18. And so, of course, we're in the middle of getting this thing engineered, permitted, the whole 9 yards, to get started as soon as we possibly can. And in Montgomery County, that is a huge pain.
Montgomery County, Maryland, which is not fun.
That's it. So dealing with all the government agencies involved, we're going through permitting. So we make an architect change, and we start the interview process again. And I will tell you, you know, I worked with Sam Green here. I knew Andrew, and I followed his career. I met Andrew when he came to volunteer here. And I've kind of followed his career and saw that, look, he's the next. And I say next, a couple years ago, he's not the next anymore. He is the guy.
He's the now. He is the hot. He is the hot hand.
He was the next Coor Crenshaw, dope hands, and Andrew is in all of those conversations now, and the work he's doing around the country is insanely good. I mean, Oak Hill, Inverness.
Yeah.
He starts Scioto this summer, and
he's a busy man.
He's so busy. He's dedicated to his projects. He really was on the ground with us 2 to 3 days a week. And whether that was finishing a green, which would take a day to get it exactly the way he wanted it, or sitting in an excavator shaping a bunker, or on a dozer shaping certain parts of a hole. I mean, Andrew is the whole package. He's everything you'd want. And then the most amazing thing about Andrew Green is he's humble.
He's extremely humble. I was just going to say that.
He's just humble. He's a great guy. He's a great person, great family man. And I can't say enough about him. We're very lucky, and we're lucky that happened. And sometimes it's fate. And, you know, it's funny. People ask me, well, what did he do? Did he take the old plan, or what did he do? I said, no, Andrew came in, did not look at any plans at all, and designed an entirely new plan for us. And it's amazing. I mean, the 10th hole, which you've seen, little drop shot par 3, kind of reminds you of 7 at Pebble, other than we don't have an ocean in the back.
Right. Yeah. Put an ocean.
We're going to buy one.
Yeah. You should bring one in.
Yeah. Put a wave pool in.
Yeah. You can do that. Just a big board with a picture behind it.
That's right. That's right. But Andrew was the only architect that we talked to that came up with that plan to move the 10th hole where it is today, and it makes it such a more seamless walk around the property. I mean, the entire walk to me today, it's like a symphony. You know, it's got highs and lows.
Beautiful. That's a good way to describe it.
It really flows well. It's so cool.
You know, I was driving around with Matt Sumner, your superintendent on that property, and I noticed, you know, how he kind of cut the edges of the green, and I was really taken by that. And, you know, and I asked Matt that, and, you know, he said, that's kind of funny. Not many people, you know, catch that as quickly. And I said, you know, what was the thought process? What he told me was he wanted to create a design that would look as if it was built with horses, you know, in an old style, so that there wasn't this massive land movement. I mean, it was, you know, and you can see what he was able to accomplish in the way the terrain goes. I mean, I am not a golfer, as you well know, having played with me in Ireland once, and embarrassed myself. Yes, that was, yeah, exactly. But I am quite the student of architecture, and I gotta say, I was really taken by that. When Matt described that to me, I mean, he really took his time to just kind of find ways to follow what was there. I mean, obviously, you guys moved an awful lot of earth, I'm sure, but how much earth was moved? Was it a lot of heavy movement?
So there was more earth moved building all of the sediment basins on property. You remember how monstrous the sediment basins were, than actually building the golf course. Now, if you remember the old layout from the 80s and Reese Jones, and at that time, that was something that a lot of people were doing. You know, it was the time of TPC Sawgrass and stadium golf, and there was a lot of mounding around the property.
Lots of mounding.
But the problem is, with mounding came impounded water as well. And what Andrew did was he really restored the natural landfalls around the entire property, which took some dirt moving. I mean, he had to get rid of all the mounding and then restore those natural landfalls. And if you remember walking around the front, you actually see some ditch work that he's put in. And I can show you pictures from the 20s where those ditches were in those exact places. And hey, the reason those ditches were there was to convey water, and that's why they're there today.
Did he do that purposely based on old schematics or old pictures?
He did. Andrew's a big research guy. He's a huge research guy. And like I said, I mean, I could just go on and on about the work that Andrew does. It's just so good. And I think, you know, we just sent our video out to all the members of the club, talking about opening day, which will be June 10th. And
can't move that to September or next June or something like that. Let it grow in a little bit longer.
Well, we said June 10th. We just didn't say what year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's really cool. There's some really good drone footage. After we get off of this, I'll send it to you.
Oh, that'd be cool. That would be cool. Let's talk about the property. It's unrecognizable from what it used to be to me. How many trees were removed?
A lot. There were a lot of trees removed.
You're not allowed to say that because the county might be listening.
It took a lot of work. It took a lot of on-site mitigation. It took a lot of off-site mitigation, line into forest banks. It was a huge engineering feat to get us to where we are today. And, Mike Jufrey did a lot of that work ahead of time. And over a number of years, kind of 16, 17, 18, a lot of the tree work was done. And then when I came in, I guess the good majority of it was done as we prepped for construction. But the vistas out here are incredible now. They're amazing. And they're really restored to what you saw in the 20s and 30s.
So you can now see from your shop the church. You can see it's the old cathedral. What is that?
No, that's an old church that's been there since the late 1800s, I want to say. And it's really cool. It's just amazing. The views are incredible. That's behind the 16th green.
Yeah. And I never even knew it was there before until you did all this work.
And from that green, you can see back and look straight at 2 green.
Yeah.
So,
which is really quite amazing.
Views are amazing, and great airflow, great sunlight. I mean, those were the things that this golf course was lacking.
Talk to me. I know, and unless this is a real headache for you, because I know I've talked to you a number of times during this process, and it seemed like you were always in battle with the county or some regulator or somebody yelling and screaming at you, or neighbors because you're constructing around. I mean, you went through an awful lot of regulatory stuff to get this project done with. And was it all the county? Was it the state? I mean, I'm not even sure. I mean, it seemed like every day you were, dealing with some kind of regulator.
So many government agencies involved, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Montgomery County DPS, you have the state, you have the Maryland and National Capital Park and Planning Commission, who they deal with trees. You have Maryland Department of the Environment, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the list goes on and on and on.
Wow,
and,
I didn't even know that.
We were the biggest land development project in Montgomery County in probably the past 20 years, and we had a lot of eyes on us.
Yeah.
And I think there's such a misnomer and such a misunderstanding to the environmental benefits of golf.
Yeah, and, I agree.
I just think the average tree hugger doesn't understand that at all.
Yeah, we are hands down the largest carbon sequestration processor in open land. I mean, we're cover cropped of green material that literally pulls carbon out of that soil and traps it into the ground, out of the air and traps it into the ground. I mean, when you have a property like yours, I mean, how many acres are you on that course now?
We're about 160 acres on that golf course.
That's cover cropped with grass.
That's
constantly
right.
Cover cropped. I mean, it's not like it's even a farm field that they take a crop off every year. We're cover cropped. We're pulling carbon out of the atmosphere on all those acres and putting it into the soil. I mean, you were one of the greatest carbon, sequestration agents in that area, and you got tons of grief over it, which is nuts. Now, admittedly, trees are great, but there's still a ton of trees on that property. But it's grass now, and it's actually as strong as anything in grabbing carbon out of the atmosphere, and there's certainly a lot of carbon in the atmosphere around where you are right now.
No doubt.
with a lot of hot air from people, just talking.
That's
so,
right.
One of the things that I, that really hit me when I was there, and I think this. I'm a big Bill Core groupie, and the work that they do on bunker work, I've always been a big fan of. But I got to tell you, the bunker work on this property that Andrew did and you guys did is spectacular. And I think Matt told me 137 bunkers. Is that right?
139.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed 2. Sorry about that.
Yes,
139. So and the thing about it that's so amazing is there's not one that's alike. I mean, they go from tiny little coffin bunkers to things the size of Rhode Island. I mean, it's just amazing, all that work. And 16 complex. I mean, that whole area up there. I mean, I remember that was being shaped when I was there a year ago, and then to see
the
it
Great
finished.
Hazard.
Yeah, you're calling it the Great Hazard, right?
Right. It's a great hazard.
It is a great hazard. So 100, where did that, whose idea was 139 bunkers, and who gets to maintain them?
I think it just happened, and all of a sudden now we have to maintain them. So
Right, exactly.
for us, and actually, I've just been thinking about your whole talk of carbon sequestering, and I think I'm going to change my title to Carbon Sequester Agent, CSA.
I think you should be a CSA. I think you are. You are one of the greatest CSAs in Montgomery County, and I'll write you a little dissertation on that, and we can present it to the county and let them chew on that for a while when they start giving you grief. But it's very true. That's that property. But again, this so the property went from, what was it in terms of yardage? It's now 8,000 from the tips. Is that what you guys are now?
We're 7820 from the tips.
Wow.
Yeah, we were 74 and change before that. Yep, 70. No, let me take that back. We were 75 and change before that. So an extra 300 yards.
Wow, but how many bunkers were on the property prior? 12?
Yeah, not as many.
No, certainly not as many, and not as many. And the interesting thing is when you're on the tee box, a lot of them are, obviously the pros are going to know where everything is, but the average guy that's playing golf on that property, you're going to be running into bunkers left. I would be in a bunker every shot, but because there's so many bloody bunkers on there, but they're so subtle and they're so well placed and they're so strategically placed. And again, some of them are tiny and some of them are massive. It's just an amazing piece of work, and and I think it's going to be great. So what's the chances of another 18 under at the next big tournament at Congressional? I think Rory was 18 under at the Open bunch of years ago.
16
under. All right.
Look, I think that was a combination of a bunch of things. First of all, Rory was on fire. Second of all, he had a bunch of rain, so that everyone was throwing darts. Right. It was a different golf course. It was very narrow. It was an air attack game, and the flatter greens. So our greens are bigger. They've got a heck of a lot more movement now. The fairways are super wide. I mean, we went from 24 acres of fairway to 48 acres of fairway, believe it or not.
Wow, I did not know that.
But what's happened along with that is we've tied a lot of tees into fairways. We've tied a lot of fairway into the next hole. And the other thing is there's a lot of room to hit the ball. And as you get further down the hole into the Rory and Bryson DeChambeau area, that's when the bunkering really narrows down. And that's when these guys really need to be thinking about it. So he built the golf course for everyone, which is really cool in that it's playable for the higher handicap players. But as you get further down the hole into that 300 to 330 range, it's a bear.
Yeah. Is Andrew a golfer?
He is a golfer.
So, I can't imagine. The whole concept of golf course architecture to me is just, fascinating. But, to be able to think through the shots of every hole that he designs, and he had to be thinking about that with that bunkering. He had to be thinking this is a championship golf course, and, and he wanted to create something that was going to be challenging and tough,
Big time.
What's the next big tournament?
So we'll open on June 10th, and next June we host the Kpmg Women's PGA Championship. So
wow,
1 year after we open the golf course, and we're excited about it. The great thing is those women play so well.
Yeah, they're
so accurate, and you also are seeing some super length out of the ladies these days too.
Oh yeah, so they can hit it.
It's going to be a real fun way to start to understand, okay, how's this golf course playing for the pros?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What was some of the real challenges of doing this growing? Kinloch obviously had its uniqueness, but what kind of headaches, other than the obvious regulatory stuff, but from an agronomic standpoint, what were some of the headaches of getting this project done?
Well, I think Andrew built really interesting push-up greens. He built, like we talked about, he built 1920s era greens that sit up in the profile, and they fall off pretty steeply around them. So they're a little tough to navigate with a walk mower in turn. as we were growing in, I think the cleanups, like any grow in, you battle the cleanups on greens, and we battled the cleanups, and it took us a while to really get those filled in and work hard to build up some body. I mean, I think we all know the reason cleanups thin down is because they don't have enough body to take all that traffic and take the pounding of mowers pounding down on them. And once you get the chance to build that body up, I think it's much better. And look, we've got some incredible new grasses out there. We went with 50% 007, 25 Piranha, and 25 Coho. And man, those new grasses like the Piranha and Coho are so dense and so tight. They're beautiful, beautiful.
Would you recommend those?
Absolutely.
They're the hot grasses apparently right now, Coho.
You bet. And super heat tolerant.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be super happy with what we're doing out here. And then the fairways are 50-50 blend of 007 and match play, both very heat tolerant. And look, I mean, our hope is to promote walking on this property, have more people walking with caddies, and in turn, that enables us with as much play as we do out here. It really enables us to keep the place firm and fast, and that's what we want to give the golfers.
And you've got cart paths everywhere, is that right?
We have cart paths everywhere, and you know, a big part of that, Joel, is also hosting major championships. You need the infrastructure.
Yeah. Was this designed to be able to create an audience? I mean, create fans positioning on the property? Was that in mind?
No, like I would say when you think about, hey, when they first built Sawgrass and thought about that entire stadium feel.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, the first thought was let's build an amazing golf course. We did walk the property with Kerry Haig from the PGA of America, the Chief Championships Officer, and Kerry's just a humble, amazing person, one of the best in the golf industry. And he did have some tweaks, like for instance, look, they're going to have to get a lot of people around this property, especially as we get further down the line, PGA Championship, and then culminating with the Ryder Cup. I mean, you're talking about monstrous crowds.
Yeah, so, lots of people.
You know, Kerry did mention, hey, I'd love to have, you know, an extra 10 feet of room on the left side of 16 green because the crowd's going to be coming up this side and around the back, and we need to get them around the back to the other side, things that you don't always think about. So
exactly.
We shifted a little 10 foot there, but it was great to have his input too. He's just a really bright guy.
Was the PGA decision made prior to construction?
It was made prior to construction, yes.
So you guys knew going into construction what your tournament schedule was going to be, and then you already had that all laid out, all those years of tournament that goes. What did you tell me? It goes out to the mid 30s to the late.
Well, it was supposed to go out to 2036, and of course, COVID pushed the Ryder Cup back a year, so now it's 2037.
And you'll be what, 28, 20, no, you'll be 40 by the time that.
Yeah, I should be 40 by the time that happens.
Yeah. But the carts will be electric by then, and you'll be super fast.
So.
It'll be little Tesla carts that you can get you around.
Let's hope they drive themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I know you're busy. I appreciate your time. I thank you for all the years of friendship. We've had some great times together. I hope we can continue to have some great times. The property is spectacular. I mean, one thing you said to me last week when I went down there, I came back into the office and I'm not saying this just to blow smoke, but I walk on construction projects all the time, but there really was very, very few blemishes. I mean, you are as close to being ready to open at this point in time. And I still think that you're opening up too soon, but that's my agronomy head telling me that you could wait a year and let the baby grow into an infant before you walk all over it. But the place is spectacular and with very little really left to do. Are you ready for one more month before you're really you're going to get hammered when you open that place up?
Are we ready? We are not anywhere near ready. We've got so much to do in the next month. It's incredible. And the lists just keep growing, but hey, you know what? That day's going to come whether we're ready or not. And
it's going to happen.
As ready as we can be. And, look, I just want to say also to you, we've been friends for a long, long time.
Yes, we have. And
you've been a huge part of my career and your advice over the years and your consulting on soils. So you've been as big a part of my career as anyone. So I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you soon.
and have another Pinot Noir and enjoy some time, and so maybe even go back to Ireland and find a little trout over there. Find some little dog track to play some golf in, like we did a couple of years ago. But hey, you really shouldn't be spending time talking to me. I'm sure you got a lot of things to do. But Pete, thank you so much. Again, I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to see your next construction project in a couple of years, and because I'm sure you won't sit still. But let's hope you can hang out here and maybe get to the Ryder Cup. That'd be kind of fun. I might be gone by then, but you'll still be around.
I'll be here.
Thank you very much.
All right,
thank
brother.
you. Yes, absolutely. And everybody, thanks for joining us for the podcast. If you're not a subscriber, please join us and subscribe so you can listen to great people like Pete Wendt. And Pete, again, thank you so much. And good luck with the opening.
See you, pal. Talk soon.